Hello and welcome to the band. You're about to start on a great journey where you'll learn a new instrument. The next few videos will show you how to make your first sounds, how to play some notes, how to put together your instrument, how to take care of it, and how to be part of the band. So, grab your instrument and all your supplies, and let's get started. All right, so first of all, you want to be sure that your instrument is opened, that your instrument case is opened on a nice flat surface. Opening it on your lap or even opening it on a music stand can be detrimental. I've seen it happen so many times. So take my advice the first time and set it on a nice hard surface like a table or the ground. The next thing you want to be sure is that with the case, this is a Yamaha flute, and most brands are this way, but you'll notice that this side does not have any brand labeling at all. That is the bottom part of the case. This, you can see that Yamaha is right here, and so that means that this is the top part of the case. When you open up the latches, those should flip down. So if you've got a case that doesn't have a name on it, or you've got names on both sides, like if it's an older instrument, many times they did that, be sure that your latches flip down like that. That means you're going to be opening it up the right way. So once you've done that, go ahead and open up your case. You're going to find a few things in here right away. The first thing, we have the head joint. The head joint is what you put your lips against to make sound. So we'll be starting an exercise with this in just a few minutes. The next part is the main body. The body has all those keys on it, and those are the ones you get to push down and make all the awesome music with. The last piece is the foot joint. This is the part that goes on the end of the flute so that you've got those last few buttons so you can stretch and get really, really low. When you're putting together your instrument, be sure you're careful of the rods, because these rods are really complicated and there's a lot of little springs and things like that in here. So when you grab it, try not to grab it on those rods so that you don't bend them. So I would start with the head joint and our main body piece, and those go together just like this, nice and easy. Be sure you're holding an area that's not a rod, and gently push it in. Now you'll notice that there's kind of a line right here. If I pushed it in all the way, that line goes away. No instrument should be pushed in all the way. So we're going to leave a little bit of space there. Now when we line this up, we've got our head joint here and our main body piece. The mouthpiece, or this hole right here, should be lined up with these keys right here, with those buttons. So you can look straight down it and see that those are lined up. Then we'll flip it around, and this is the last piece that goes on. You notice there's two ends. It's kind of easy to get confused. That end obviously won't go on. The end that doesn't have any keys on it is the very end of the flute. So you want to get these keys that are closest to the end next to the main body of the flute. Now a lot of times when beginners start, you'll want to line up all the keys like that because it looks pretty, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's awesome. That's the way it's supposed to be. But this rod right here on the foot joint is actually supposed to line up with all of these keys and with your tone hole right there, so that it's in a nice straight line. That way when you put your fingers on it, you're comfortable with your right hand right there. And your pinky doesn't have to reach, it doesn't have to bend back too far. It's just nice and comfortable to push that button down. Okay, now with the flute, before we get things going, we're going to start with the head joint first, because this is where the sound is made. That is called the tone hole right there, and that's the mouthpiece. So in order to form our lips in the right way, that's called the embouchure, we have to go we, two. So we, two. And then put the instrument right up underneath that bottom lip so you can almost feel the edge of that hole, the tone hole, with the bottom lip. And then say we, two, and blow. And there you get the sound. I'm going to have Jasmine show you a couple of examples. Okay, now that we have the flute all put together and all of the finger buttons and all of the rod here on the foot joint and the tone hole line up, now it's time to actually make some notes. So, with your left hand, kind of like as if you were holding a softball, you can kind of drop it down to your side and feel like, okay, my fingers are really comfortable. Now grip kind of a softball and bring it up. That's kind of how your hand ought to be. It's just in a little bit of a curve. And it goes on the second button, the fourth button, and the fifth button. So you've got to skip that first one and skip the third one with those first three fingers. Then there's some buttons in the back, so you'll put your thumb on those buttons in the back, and that's your left hand right there. Now you'll notice that my palm is facing myself and the back of my hand is facing away. That's the proper way. A lot of times beginners want to do weird things and it's just awkward. So your palm is facing yourself in a nice curve like you're holding a softball down to your side, and put it on the second button, the fourth, and the fifth. And then this pinky, don't tuck it in because you got to have that ready in case you need to push this button here. And then the thumb goes on the back. Now with the right hand, the right thumb is just kind of a support and it goes on the back part of the flute right here. Then, if you're to count down the flute, the sixth button you skip, the seventh button you skip, and then you put your first finger on the eighth, the ninth, and the 10th. It's really the last three buttons. That's what makes it really easy. There's these two little weird buttons that kind of separate your three fingers there. And then this pinky right here is extremely important. This one pushes that button down right there quite often. So now you know how to hold the flute. Now, Jasmine's going to show us a couple of good ways and not so good ways to hold the flute. The first way that a lot of beginners hold the flute wrong is they try and pull up their shoulder into their jaw and they play a lot like this. I don't know why people do that, but it seems to be a little bit human nature to do that. So just be sure that you're not pulling your shoulder up to your chin. Your chin needs to face forward and maybe a little bit to your left. And you just simply bring the instrument to you. Don't ever reach out for the instrument or pull back from the instrument and get this kind of weird chin thing going on. Just bring the instrument to you as if you were standing up. Bring the instrument to you. Now your right arm, Jasmine's going to show you something else. A lot of times beginners will want to pull that right arm way, way back. But it's best if you just let it come forward. It's a lot more comfortable that way. So with our right arm comfortable and forward and up enough, another thing that a lot of beginners do is they'll try and play with their arms down a lot. So keep your arm up, lift it up, and you're good to go. That way you have good posture and you're ready to play. So now Jasmine is going to show you a couple of exercises that will help you figure out your first notes. First of all, we're going to start on D. D uses your left hand thumb, your second and third finger on the left hand, and the first, the second, and the third finger on your right hand. That's D. The next note is easy. The next note is E flat, and all you have to do is that little right hand pinky, that has to be pushed down. That's all. That's all you have to do. Now the next one, you've got to switch a few fingers. So going from E flat, now you need to put your first finger down on your left hand and lift up the second and third finger on your right hand, and this will give you F. Now Jasmine's going to play through a few examples that will show you how to move fluidly between those three notes. Be sure to use your tongue and say 2, 2, 2 between notes. keep the air flowing nice and solid, and don't ever let it stop. It's a lot like a garden hose. The water's always running, but sometimes we can put our thumb over it to make it seem like the water stops, but it's always going. That's how our air works. So keep the air going, and we simply interrupt the air with our tongue. Like that. All right, you've done a great job at playing the flute. So now that you're done with the flute and you're ready to put things away, you need to do a couple of things before you put it away so that it stays nice and clean and doesn't get gunk built up in it. So what you're going to need is you're going to need a rag, and inside your case you should have a cleaning rod. It's either going to be plastic or metal, something that kind of looks like a big, almost like a big needle that's not pointy because it has this little hole right here that you can put something through. So we're going to take our rag and we're going to kind of feed it through. My rag's kind of small, but it will work. You kind of feed it through, and then I like to wrap my rag over the top of it so that we don't see any of the plastic or the metal. And then that way when you put it inside the flute, you're not scraping things up. So once I have my rag ready, I'll just gently insert it into the head joint, and I kind of spin it as I move it in and out. And that cleans out the moisture, because when you play, you create a lot of condensation inside the instrument because you have warm, moist air going into the instrument. So we have to get that condensation out. Now when you play an instrument, you always want to remember not to eat any kind of food, especially sugary food, before you play. And if you do, be sure you rinse out your mouth before you play, and if you can, brush your teeth before you play so you don't get that sugar and that junk in your instrument, because they'll last a lot longer if you can do that. So you'll use your rag and you'll get all of the moisture out of the head joint, and then put that piece back. The next piece will be the main body, and I kind of like to go from the top here and just gently twist as you move it down. Go down as far as you can, and then pull it back out to remove all the gunk. And then come to the other end and get the last little bit that you missed, because it's obviously not long enough to get all the way through. So kind of clean that out really good. Pull all the moisture out of that, and then you're ready for the foot joint. And just kind of do the same thing there. Now the foot joint almost never gets any moisture in it because it's so far down the instrument. A lot of the hot air and moisture and stuff escapes through the keys before you get there. But it's always a good precaution just to be sure that there's no moisture in that. And then go ahead and put it back in your case and lock it up and put it away for the day until you're ready to come back to it tomorrow.